As a seasoned teacher myself, now more than ever, we are urged to make connections with our students for their mental health. Not all teachers are good at this, and no one was better at it than my dad. He supported you through it all and checked up on you even after you graduated. Often you would see him attending extracurricular activities and special occasions outside of school. His classroom was his sanctuary, where he poured every ounce of his being and time into making sociology a place you would learn, think, and have a safe place to share. No matter where Dad lived or coached, his teaching was most important to him. You were all his family. Dad taught for 52 years until the day he went into the hospital. He never quit. Not long after Dad passed away, a grandmother of a Klein Oak student sent me a message letting me know that Dad was special to her disabled grandson. She said Dad would come and eat dinner at their house, or he would just stop by to watch a football game with her grandson. She sent me photos of Dad pushing her grandson across the stage at graduation, and this poem by Felicity Lucky that made her think of my dad. You once had a choice. You chose to teach, and every day it's our children you reach. You make the difference in the life of each child, those that are quiet and those that are wild. It's the way that you teach, you do it so well. They look up to you and think you are swell. You teach from the heart, it's plain to see. They think you're divine and we all agree. Please never forget and remember it's true. Our children all need great teachers like you. Dancing in the Sky was the first song that I heard after my dad passed away, and I knew I wanted it played here today, and I thought nothing better than to have two Klein Oak students come and sing that, because I know that my dad is smiling right now. Thank you, ladies. Growing up podunk. Yes, you heard that correctly, podunk. That was the nickname my dad gave me, and I bet if I was to ask over half of you here, he had a nickname he had given you as well. Growing up, I was the typical daddy's girl, and I knew he would do anything for me. Yet he instilled in me the ability to be strong, independent, and my own person. In my eyes, my childhood was solid, happier than most, and we always felt loved. Some of my fondest memories of my dad include wrestling with us on the floor. As a little girl, he would make me laugh hardest when the claw would come to town. In the mornings, I remember watching him shave, the smell of his Aramis cologne, and watching him walk out the door in his knee-high tube socks and short coaching shorts. Dad was fun. He was always making jokes, performing magic tricks, and saying riddles for us to solve. He made us think. We would go fishing often, just the two of us, at random ponds, eating pork rinds and beef jerky, and getting sunburned for hours. Together we rode every roller coaster we could find, as many times as we could, while holding our hands high together. The weekends were spent listening to Casey Kasem on the radio while accomplishing our chores around the house. As a young girl, I remember sitting in his lap, driving with the windows down in his blue Chevy pickup truck. We would share spoonfuls of peanut butter and syrup mixed together, and when you smelled the aroma of Dad's steaks and mushrooms on the grill, you knew it was going to be a great day. All the pens, papers, and more pens, files, and office supplies, all organized intently in a hard black briefcase that Dad took with him everywhere. Sometimes he would share them with me. Dad always brought me a Tex Sun brand orange juice with the foil tabs that you would peel off every time we went to this one particular gas station in Waxahachie. He would always buy a root beer. I remember waking up every day for school to a usually hot breakfast that Dad made for our family. He always packed our lunches for school too. Leftover chicken fried steak on a sandwich with a side of pickles was always the best. I felt like a part of the team the year my dad was also the head baseball coach in Waxahachie. He let me be the bat girl, and that is where I learned to spit seeds and appreciate the sounds of baseball. In his life before Klein Oak, Dad was coaching football in several small Oklahoma towns while becoming a father along the way. 1972 in Pawnee, Oklahoma, and in McAllister, 1978. It was the summer of 1980 when he took the job in Texas as the defensive coach for the Waxahachie Indian football team, where he also taught sociology until 1992. Our family of 4 grew deep roots in Hatchie, and we loved cheering on our Indians. During our time as Coach Arnold's real kids, life was grand in our eyes. I have to say that because he always had school kids too. I would be lying if we said we never got jealous of their time with him as well. But that is the life of a coach's kid. We spent our days running around the field house at Waxahachie High School, inhaling the deep, saturated stench of sweat that always now smells like home. We had pranks pulled on us by all the coaches, and my brother always seemed to get pantsed by Dad's great friend, Coach Midkiff. It was a home away from home where we spent many hours playing on the field, sliding down the press box hill, talking to other players, managers, and eating as much ice as we wanted from the ice machine. I can still hear the crackle of the gravel as we would drive up through the gate to park on the days we could convince our mom to let us go see Dad at work. Dad was always happy to see us, and he put us to work organizing equipment or making labels. We knew his time spent working was important, but it always made us feel welcome. During the football season, Dad would buy me spirit ribbons at the high school every week to wear to the elementary school the next day. I looked forward to every Thursday night when he came home with ribbons for me to wear the next day. I look back now, admiring that he chose to remember every single week to do this for me, in the midst of his busy season and his classroom duties. Dad always made me feel special with his thoughtfulness. Vacations for the Arnold family consisted of some sandy days on the beaches of Florida and Galveston, trips to Disney World, NASA, and many day escapes to Six Flags. However, our family favorite was skiing down the backside of snow-covered mountains every Christmas break. I was 4 years old on my first time to hit the slopes, and my dad taught me how to ski balancing between his legs. We went every year after that, and I think my brother was a little harder to teach than I was, but I'll let him share that story. Wolf Creek was our favorite resort, and we headed there after spending Christmas with our grandparents in Oklahoma. Every time I hear Willie Nelson's song, Pretty Paper, I reminisce about the long drives to Colorado, staring out the window, listening to Dad's country Christmas mixtape. I'll cherish those cold days with a warm heart forever. Perhaps Dad was a master of connection and relationships because he was dealt a card that had none. He was born in Los Angeles, California, to a family I do not know much about. They sure missed out by giving up their little 8-year-old boy and his sister, Janae. They both grew up in a children's home in Tipton, Oklahoma. Dad shared only sad memories with us from his time there. However, he and his sister were both rescued by Paul and Doris Arnold of Chickasha, Oklahoma. Who opened their home to them to show them real love and join their family. Grammy is here with us today, and we thank you for opening your home and your heart to our dad. I imagine the day that his last name changed from Aunches to Arnold must have been one of the happiest days of his life. I recently found out after his death, while attending a Tipton high school, he had many accolades. I never knew any of these because Dad never liked talking about himself. A former classmate of his shared this: Benji was a favorite, if not the favorite, of the class of 1964. Among his honors were 1964 Mr. Tipton High School, vice president of the senior class officer each year, president of the FFA escort junior and senior year, played basketball, baseball, and was the captain of the football team. While none of these accomplishments surprise me, it sounds like he was loved by those around him even as a teenager. I truly believe that because Dad felt unloved and unwanted at such a young age, he made sure no one else had to feel that way. I will never understand the heartache he endured as an orphan. Doesn't it make sense that this is why he made every single person he encountered feel heard and special? It does to me. Dad was the teacher that would walk down the hall making eye contact with everyone he passed. He would check on you if he felt you were down. He intervened and let nothing slide when it came to a person's well-being. A friend recently told me of a time that my dad helped her get through a tough situation. She said, "Your dad always looked out for my best interests when I was too young and stupid to do it for myself." I bet he helped many of you here today. It may have been a bad decision you made, a breakup, divorce, abuse, eating disorders, suicidal thoughts, addiction, anxiety, depression. He was knowledgeable about it all, and he could talk you through every problem. He never let you feel hopeless or alone. The next topic is a little difficult, but that's where Dad thrived, right? He spent the days in sociology talking about all the hard things in life, and he had a quote for every situation. I know, I was also a student in his sociology class. It became easy to him, but this one hits home, and I know that he would agree with me. I'm sharing this just in case there's one person here that needs to hear this. Don't let time be a thief. Our dad decided he would live elsewhere after I graduated high school. My brother and I have some scar tissue from this decision, but we were young and we knew it had nothing to do with us. 13 years passed without either of us seeing our dad. He missed giving me away at my wedding. He missed my brother's high school career. He missed knowing his grandchildren. But in January 2016, I sent my dad a letter to Klein Oak, where I found his email on the school website. At the time, my family and I were living in College Station, and he had 2 grandsons he had never met. We lived so close, and I wanted to reconnect. I sent my brother a text to let him know that I had reached out to our dad, and he told me that he had done just the exact same thing 2 days prior. We both missed our dad, and we knew he was missing out on being a grandpa to Jackson, Jace, Lexi, and Liv. I messaged my beautiful stepmom, Wanda, and let her know of the time of my son's upcoming basketball game in Tomball that weekend, hoping my dad would show up. The hug in the parking lot that Saturday is one I will always remember. He looked different with age, and his hair had all turned gray, but the embrace rushed the familiar feelings I always had in his arms. The following weekend, he went to my brother's house to meet his family in Oklahoma City. We were whole. We had him back. We never talked about the past, and he never missed another game or concerts my sons invited him to the next 7 years. I wish I had not wasted 13 years of time, but I am thankful for the last 7 years of reconnection. Thank you, Wanda, for encouraging that to happen. I could not have the peace that I have today if we had not connected again. The moral of this story is someone in your life may not be there because time has robbed you. My dad and my brother and I encourage you to take the first step. Call or text in mending that connection. You may just have to say, let's pick up from today and let the past go. We wish we had done it sooner, and now we are out of time. Lastly, here are a few things you may not know about my dad. A long time ago, he was the best driver's ed teacher and made you practice while eating donuts and holding Sonic drinks. Dad was an artist of sorts. He loved to paint, he loved to write, create, and if he ever wrote you a letter, you enjoyed his beautiful handwriting. Dad evidently was quite the pool shark in college. He had nose surgery as an adult to correct damage from a bar fight he had in college while playing pool. The big Indian chief statue at the end of the end zone of the football field in Waxahachie my dad found in an old Chief Auto Parts store. He arranged for that to be delivered, and he painted it as it still stands today. Dad was an avid fisherman during our childhood and loved fishing in an inner tube and waders in the middle of the ponds until he would see a snake. Dad loved music. He DJ'd every high school dance for years. Our thing growing up was to attend rock concerts together. Lots of concerts, like AC/DC, Kiss, Rolling Stones, Ted Nugent. Kyle and I both believe that Stevie Ray Vaughan was his favorite. I just heard recently that he had co-signed on a car loan for his student trainer that was his right-hand man for years. The first year out of high school, when the kid had nothing but my old yellow bike. I also heard a story that my dad made arrangements with a dentist to help a self-conscious girl with her discolored teeth. She told me this story, not him. Sometimes the telephone would ring late at night, and Dad would help others in need, usually a student or family. Dad has a massive collection of hundreds of CDs and DVDs, all alphabetized, in his office at home. He used to carry a piece of paper that was folded up and it was all typed and indexed, and he could tell you everything that he had. Dad played college football at Southwestern Oklahoma State University, also at Cameron Junior College, where he played in the Junior Rose Bowl. When eating out, usually breakfast, Dad would pick up the tab for any veteran he saw. He loved his country something fierce. In closing, let me say I 100% believe in angels. Now, I would like to tell you that Dad understood the assignment. On his 4th day in heaven, he appeared to our oldest son, Jackson, right after a tragic car accident where he suffered a brain bleed and lost memory for a week. When getting out of the ICU and trauma unit 2 days later, we asked Jackson how he got to the hospital. He told me, "Your dad took me." Thank you, Dad. Love, Podunk.
Again, good morning, everybody. My name is Thomas Hensley. I'm the principal at Klein Oak High School, and I know that we all are here to honor the legacy, the life, and to celebrate the life of a great man who impacted all of us greatly, and thousands of others who are not present. And Benji Arnold is a one of a kind and somebody we all love dearly. And someone also that loved him dearly was Reverend Randy Tomlinson. I get the chance to introduce him to come forward. He's going to preside over the service today. Randy, you want to come forward, sir, at this time? And he'll lead the proceedings. Again, thank you all. Thank you all for being here. And we love Benji so much. Thank you all.
It's good to be together this morning. The occasion is sad, but sadness shared brings gladness. And today, this morning, right now, there'll be people who are going to be tempted to cry. Some of you may already be leaning that way, and that's great. Do it. But there's going to be some laughter too, but we're going to hear some more stories. We're not through. I'm going to refer to our friend as Coach Arnold. That's how I most often heard him and thought about him. So that's who he's going to be this morning. And I've been watching these pictures, and I was reminded of those pointy-toed boots and the shirt with the snapped buttons and that belt. I hope that belt ends up somewhere important. But, of course, we remember that grin. Coach Arnold was ready to grin. And most often it was directed towards students. Let me tell you two little occasions I've had in hearing things about him or encountering him. One, several years ago, right down the road at Denny's, early in the morning, on my way to Klein Oak, I stopped because it seemed like an omelet was the right thing. And then there was a young man who might have been doing everything, cooking and serving, I'm not sure, but he recognized me, and And he came up to speak. He didn't want to talk about me. He didn't want to talk about Klein Oak. He wanted to talk about Coach Arnold. Coach Arnold had meant something to him. And he wanted to talk about it, even though he wasn't there anymore. And then a number of years ago, at a very pleasant retirement reception in the Klein Oak Library, Coach Arnold was there. And when it was over, he evaluated my performance. He felt the need to come up and talk to me about how I had done. He wanted to make sure I passed. But for him, the test was, how much attention do you pay to the children who came? Not the old folks, the children. Isn't that him? That's Coach. He had an eye for children. And I'm looking forward this morning to hearing some stories from family. Just fill in some more of the backstory. He told me a few things about his early childhood that helped me understand his deep devotion to the flourishing of young people around him. And I bet this morning we're going to hear more. And I look forward to that. And I know that we're going to have a time when individuals, even you, can say something about Coach Arnold. And I look forward to that because it is our voices shared that will do him the honor that he deserves today, will give him the tribute that is rightly his. But I also want to tell you a story. Not my story. It's from a book. But in this story, a young man decides he wants to go away. And so he goes to his father and says, "Give me my share of the inheritance." His father gives it to him. And the young man takes off and goes to a far country, we're told. And there he spends what he was given in riotous living. He squanders it in reckless living. Actually, if you stop and think about it, it sounds like a young man going to college. He takes his father's money, goes far away, and spends it recklessly. At least that could be the case, but that's not the case here. This young man takes his money and he goes far and spends it. And after it's gone, then comes a famine in the land. And this young man finds himself glad to get a job feeding pigs. And he starts noticing that the pig pods that they're eating, starting to look pretty good. And nobody offers him anything. And then he came to himself and realizes that his father's servants are eating better than he is. And so he decides to go home. And he plans a little speech. When I get home, I'm going to say to my father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm not worthy to be your son. Treat me as one of your servants. And he heads home. And while on his way, his father looks. Before he gets home, his father sees him while he's still far off. And what does the father do? The father runs. He runs because we're told he has compassion. And then he runs toward the son. He embraces him and he kisses him. Ladies and gentlemen, he 5-verbed this thing. Let's rehearse the verbs. He saw. He had compassion. He ran. He embraced. He kissed him. And then the son commences the little speech that he had rehearsed. Father, I have sinned before heaven in your sight. I'm not worthy to be your son. Before he can even finish, the father says, bring the best robe, put it on him. Right? Put a ring on his finger and shoes on his feet. Kill the fatted calf. It's time to celebrate because the son has come home. Now, it does go on from there, and another brother's mentioned, but I don't want to talk about him. We're going to talk about what's happened here. Now, if I ask you, at least some people in this room would know, you would know the name of that story. And I'm going to remind you, but I want to challenge that name. It's not the necessary name, it's the chosen name. Of course, we know that is the story of the prodigal son. But you understand what prodigal means? That's that reference to him going and spending recklessly. That's what prodigal means. Right? And that is part of the story, so it's understandable that's the name. But we don't have to be satisfied with that name. We can do better than that, I think. So in one sense, it is not the story of the prodigal son. It is the story of the homecoming son. In my mind, that's just as more important, that he comes home. But even better than that, it is the story of the running father. Think about that with me. While he's still far off, the father sees him. He doesn't wait for him to come up and fall before him and beg for forgiveness. The father sees him. The father sees that he's on his way back, and so he goes running. This is not the story of the prodigal son. It's the story of the running father. Now, I want you to know the story like that is meant to work at more than one level, and we're going to talk about more than one. But let's note this first. Coach Arnold was like this father in one astonishing way. Well, no, this is just one of the ways, but one of those ways is that Coach Arnold always had an eye in the distance, looking for somebody coming home. He had an eye open for those coming down the hallway toward him. Who needs to be noticed? Who needs to be seen by a father figure who's interested in him? Who needs to have attention given to him? And as you know, we're here today because he gave us the gift of attention. And so today we give his family the gift of our presence. And it is a great gift. I'm reading Job these days, and 3 friends show up while he's in his misery, and they sit with him for 7 days. Silently. It's beautiful. And then they get stupid and talk. I know somebody's already thinking, why don't you sit down and be quiet? Okay, I understand. But I want you to know that you have given a gift today by your presence. You have showed up. And thank you for that. The family thanks you, and we're glad to hear it. But I want you to think about this father, the running father, and Coach Arnold with his eye down the hallway at Klein Oak, outside when he used to be in the T building, outside looking for students who need to be noticed. And you see in the pictures today, place after place, even wearing, now this was a strange one, even wearing the Indian attire when he went to a student's wedding. What a beautiful, beautiful sight. He gave up his pointed boots for that. Coach Arnold had an eye looking out for students. And then, of course, he wanted to run and embrace them, hug them, and say, I want to help you. Mr. Delson told me that Coach Arnold had a stash of video, movies, and music, and kind of his DJ stuff. He'd pull out these clips, and he knew how to take little pieces and put them together. And he helped students do that, help young people who are struggling in their lives and say, how do I put all these pieces together? Let me help you. Let me give you words. Let me give you that grin. Let me give you attention. And you'll figure out a way. And you're here today because he helped you do that. But there's another level to the story, and I want to be true to that as well. Of course, this story is about a father, but it's also about another father. And it's about other prodigals. And so all of us, I believe, are prodigals, have been prodigals. And we have the choice to add to the story. We have the choice not to end in our prodigality, but we can end as the children who are coming home. This morning, we can think about that. We can use this occasion to take stock of our lives and say, do I need to be a homecoming child. If that story is true, we also know then that if you choose, remember what it said, when he came to himself, when he was there with the pig pods, and he came to himself, when he came to his right mind, we're told, he realized his circumstances. And the simple word there, he repented. He turned. He changed his life, and he came home. Right? And there is a father who is a running father who waits, looking for children to come home. And this morning, in our sadness, let us enjoy one another. Let's relish the sadness. And let us relish the gladness that comes with it. And let us also remember that it is possible for us to be the homecoming children who come to meet the Father who runs toward them. I'm going to ask you now to bow with me in prayer. Holy God, you are the running Father. We pray for comfort and peace for those who sorrow. We pray for hope for those who struggle. And we pray thankfully for the good man, Coach Arnold. We pray you'd bless this time and these people as they sorrow and suffer. Help them sorrow well. We thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
This is going to suck. I should have gone first. I'm going to do my best here, guys. So, she had like 7 pieces of paper. I've got 1. So just bear with me. Grammy, I'm so glad you got to make it today. Not yet. Okay. Can I just hold this? Is everybody okay with that? So I'm going to tell that story that you told. So we were skiing. I don't know if it was Wolf Creek or whatever, but we were going up this lift. Guys, I'm going to be terrible at this, but we're going up this lift, and I guess I just kept giving my dad a hard time about it. And so he pulled me to the side. Just me and him, I think. But he said, he got down in my face, and he said, son, if you don't figure this out and get a better attitude about it, I'm going to rip your head off and stuff snow down the hole. Needless to say, I figured out how to ski within like 15 minutes. It's like, that sounds terrible. What was the other story that you brought up that I was going to jump in on? The driver's ed. So he had a Mustang, which those gentlemen right there, some high school buddies of mine, thank you everybody for coming. They will remember that car, but it was when I was doing driver's ed and we're out in the country. And I didn't have any Sonic, but he put his hands over my eyes while we're driving down the country road, and he pulls the car halfway in the ditch, and I'm doing like 30, right? And so he lets off, and I just hit the gas, and so we like get sideways into the grass or whatever, and that was the complete wrong thing to do. He's like, stop the car, and he gets out. And I'm trying to look at the crowd here. If I slip up with the cuss word, I apologize right now because it does happen. But he said some choice words to me, and it was just the way that he would teach. I mean, I can just see the whole Sonic deal. He's like, you got to get yourself in these situations so you know what to do when it really happens. So there was one other story that you brought up that I was touching on. I can't remember. I'm going to be kind of all over the place today. But I will say one thing that happened about 30 minutes ago. I was in the bathroom and just washing my hands, and there was a young man in there somewhere in the crowd today, and I could tell that he was feeling the same way I was. I know I shook many of you guys' hands this morning as I was walking around talking, but I could tell that he was feeling the way I was, but I was just laughing at everything today, just trying to hold it together. But anyways, we had a long hug in the bathroom, and it just makes me know, which I've never doubted it, but he was always able to have that effect on people. Like, I know you guys are going to miss him just like I do, but he was always able to, within like 5 minutes of first conversation, be able to get down to where it means something to you. Does everybody agree with that? I mean, it was weird with that. I didn't get that, but which is part of my story. I'm like, man, why didn't you give me all those traits? But anyways, he was really so good at that. All right, and I know nobody told him, Christy had a poem, and so I'm going to sing an a cappella version of, no, I'm just kidding. I could never, you can't even talk right now, Kyle. What are you doing? All right, so I'm going to read some of these stories, and hopefully it was really good. The one that you were coming back to is about, I can't remember which part, but okay. So knowing my dad, and I'm sure that everybody here will agree, he would, whatever I have to say, to have some sort of a teaching moment to where when I get done, we all walk away and you go, man, he's got a good way of looking at that. Well, I'm letting you know right now, like I said a while ago, I don't have that trait, so just don't get your hopes up. But anyways, he was amazing at that. And what I would like to do today is just make my best attempt to describe the influence my dad had on so many people. I've seen what I would consider current students today, and then we got some guys that I haven't seen in, I don't know how long it's been, Brent, Emmett, so many years. Just, that's the effect that he had on people. So, first story, when I was in grade school, which this goes back to the skiing deal. And there's a picture up there that kind of outdoes the pants that I'm talking about. But Dad, whenever camcorders came out, and if you guys are old enough, you remember what those look like. It was like a jam box. It was like this big. Well, Dad never used poles while we were skiing, right? So, and he didn't do that because he didn't like the poles. He did it because he wanted to video us while we were skiing, right? Well, that's cool and that's kind of crazy or whatever, but he had these striped peppermint, we called them peppermint pants. I know Lululemon's a thing now, but that's how these things fit on my dad, which was absolutely insane. And there's a picture up there of, I don't know what he's got on with those bibs. Obviously, I probably wasn't even alive yet, but they were absolutely terrible as well. But anyways, it wasn't very hard to find Dad on the mountain, ever. So, growing up with my dad was the most amazing experience for me, and I know that my sister would agree. There aren't many things that we would want to change about those times. He instilled so many characteristics that have molded me into the person I am today, or at least I hope I am. He always found a way to make it a learning experience, and he had a way of getting below the surface. See, I already said that twice. Y'all just bear with me. I'm going to do a couple of things here. And he was always able to give the best advice, like my sister said, in each and every situation. Like she said, I can remember countless times he'd receive phone calls in the middle of the night with someone going through a crisis, and they were reaching out to him for direction. Heck, there was a few times it required him to go to the situation, and he even took me with him if it was appropriate, just so I could see the things of, how life was and things to avoid. And you guys know, if you had him as a teacher, all the things that you need to look out for in life. And I will be the first to admit, I spent my life with this man and growing up, and I didn't listen to all that stuff, and so everybody takes their own path, but he was dang sure a good teacher. Anyways, it took me a while to understand why it was him, but those reasons have been plain as day for me and for probably everybody else in here for a long time now. And I struggle to remember, I'm sure that he got under some people's skin in the wrong way. He had to have, everybody does, but overall, percentage-wise, it was amazing of how many people just fell in love with the guy immediately. And I think that's why we're all here today. So that's just part of what I'm reading here. All right, so I've got a couple more stories. Actually, I've got a few more stories, but I believe my sister was trying out for mascot. Was that junior or senior year? Senior year. And during her performance, which was in front of the entire school in the gym in Waxahachie, she grabbed Dad out of the stands, and he got out on the floor in his boots, and I'm pretty sure he attempted to do like the Roger Rabbit dance, for those that can remember, and the crowd just erupted. And so I'm not saying that you wouldn't have won. I'm just saying that was a very, very strategic move that I do not blame you for at all. Okay, we're so good at this. All right, here's another teaching moment. Before I forget, I've got a friend here today that's no longer a teacher. He decided to go another route, but he was a teacher for I don't know how many years, Robert over here, and he told me on a couple of text messages, and we've talked about it last night, that my dad was a big influence of him going that direction, because he can remember how personal and how thoughtful Dad made the class. And it wasn't really just about the class. Robert spent a lot of time outside of it, but man, he was just so good at that. I don't know how to put it into words really. But one of the teaching moments for me, Jason was actually in this class. He was my teacher in 6th grade, which was a history class, and I can tell you everything we learned in that history class, mainly because I knew if I didn't, he would stuff snow down the hole again or whatever. But I went to the office I can't remember, I wasn't in trouble back then, so I came back into class, and I opened the door, and everybody's standing next to their desk, and they're doing this right next to their desk, and people are looking at me, and they don't have any idea what's going on. So I just put my stuff on my desk, and I just started spinning in a circle too, right? Yeah. And so it was like, I don't know, 10 seconds in, he's like, okay, everybody sit down. And he comes over to my desk, and he was like, son, I'll tell you one thing. If you just come in and go through life and just do what everybody else does and don't ask any questions, it's going to be a rough road. And it was just like, I think everybody can, yeah, you get it, right? I mean, those things happen to me so many times. There's no, you guys would get tired of me talking if I tried to stand up here and do all of that. But it just, he had a way of hitting home with simply, and I'll never forget any of it. And then another one of my favorite stories is I like to dance a lot. And that was kind of back when he used to do the DJ stuff. But there was a weight in the weight barn. I'm sure you guys are familiar with what that was. But there was a dance of some sort. I think it was a high school dance. And I was a huge Michael Jackson fan. He actually took me to that concert, one of the greatest ever. And I had the glove on and the jacket. I mean, I was the real deal, guys. Actually, when I get done, we're going to play Beat It. And I'm going to do like the moonwalk across here. But anyways, yeah, so he was like, why don't you just do a song? And so I was like, okay. Well, we get up there, and I actually did, and I think it was Thriller. And he brought a smoke machine, right? He had lights going, and I'm out there. You wonder how I did it. Like, I can't even get up here and talk, but I got out there and danced in front of everybody. And my sister and Jenny McLemore, I believe, they're like behind me as my backup dancers. Can y'all just wrap your head around that for a second? It's crazy. Anyways, it's just the childhood stuff that, Christy talked about and that I'm talking about. There's no way to explain how lucky we were. I mean, it was amazing. Okay. I'm not going to have the words to wrap this up completely. Okay, I got to do this before I forget. You were talking about fishing in an inner tube. So one time, oh man, it's so funny. We were at Goaty Bow, and it was like 30 degrees, which I like to go fishing with my dad, but he was way more into it than I was. I wasn't trying to fish when it was 30 degrees outside, and he was in the tube. Anyways, a snake had gotten in range, which is pretty much within sight of my dad, right? Well, it gets close enough to where he starts whipping the pole in the water. However, you can understand what I'm saying here. And I thought he was going to turn that water into butter. I've never seen a stick move around, and I've never seen my dad so scared, but that kind of leads me into something I'm going to get to in a second. But I'm not going to have the words to wrap this up completely, but I'm one of the luckiest people on earth to have been able to call Benji Arnold my dad and my friend. Are there some things I would have changed, which my sister hit on? Definitely. But standing up here right now, do I have any regrets? No. And that is a huge part of what you did. And I want to say thank you. I know she said thank you, but I want to say thank you, Wanda. I appreciate that. All right. He has had the biggest influence of my life, no doubt, out of anybody. And I'm going to do my best to pass all I can along to my kids. I can only hope I do half as good as he did, and I'm going to miss him every day dearly. And these are my words here, guys. He'd be mad if I left on that note. You guys know he always wanted somebody to laugh or smile, mean, even in the toughest of times, he always wanted it to be humorous. And so I'm going to end it with this one. Like she mentioned, I'm not a fan of snakes at all. In fact, I think maybe that's the only thing that I knew that he was scared of. I mean, this isn't this story, but I remember when we found a snake in the kitchen at our house, right? He went to, I don't know where he got it. I don't know if he took it off of my bed or whatever, but the rail that you sleep on, like the thing that's from here to the edge of the stage, that's what he come down the hallway with, like some kind of Mohican. And man, he absolutely tore that snake apart. I mean, and it was all out of fear. Like I can't even explain I didn't talk to him for a minute because I was like, this dude's on it right now. So, did he used to scare any of y'all? Like inadvertently? I mean, not inadvertently on his part, but did it just like catch you guys by surprise? He used to scare me so much. Well, I got him twice, okay? So one night, it was just me and him, and we watched this movie called Monkey Shines. And I don't know if anybody remembers this, but it's like a horror movie about this monkey with the symbols or whatever, right? So I don't know where everybody else was at. The movie was over. I wasn't sleeping because I was so scared. Well, anyways, he was in the kitchen, and there was just the kitchen light on, and I just ran up behind him and, like, got him in the kidneys. I mean, he jumped. I don't know how high he jumped, and I thought he was going to put me in the cabinets. It was a terrible, terrible decision. But back to the snake. One day while I was at the field house, which I spent many times doing the 12-minute runs with the football players and walking on my hands up the hill and all the things, but I was out on the football field with Pancho Cerda. He was a manager. You remember him, Emmett? So Pancho was my boy. Anyways, we hung out a lot together during the summer, and we were actually out on the football field, and I found a dead snake, right? And so me, being smart, I was like, I got an idea. So Pancho was not a fan of my idea, and he made that very clear. So Dad was painting the visitors' concession stand over there on the other side of the field, and he was on a ladder, and he had on headphones. And when I say headphones, I mean the Walkman with like the big furry deals that, you know, you don't wear anymore unless you're like making a TikTok to make fun of somebody. Anyways, he was over there doing that, and I say us, but by now he's out on this deal. I think he went inside. He wasn't going to have any part of it. So I sneak up to the fence, and it's probably from here to my sister, and, you know, he's painting, and I've got this dead snake, and I tossed it. And I'm telling you, I'm kind of athletic, but I could not make this throw again if I had to, in 100 of them. It landed, like, right across his shoulder while he's painting. And so he jumps down and he grabs it, and when he realizes that it's a snake, he said so many things that I'm not going to say today. I mean, my vocabulary got expanded within seconds, and it was quite clear I did not need to say any of those words. But that's really the end of the sheet here. I just want to say, and I know I've already hit on it, thank you guys very much for coming out here. It's no surprise to see this many people. Again, Grammy, I mean, in my eyes, you being here means everything to me. And I'm so glad that you made the trip. This is the, no doubt, most amazing lady I've ever met right here. Her and my other grandma, actually. Do we get any luckier? It's crazy. You guys are amazing. You too, Maggie. You know how I feel. I'm so glad everybody's here. Anyways, I would change a few things that's happened and didn't happen for all the reasons that Christy said earlier. But in the end, I consider myself beyond lucky to have my dad in my life and to have him guide me and running back to me. That was a good story you told earlier, Ms. Tomlinson. I agree with you. He did that with me, like the separation that Christy talked about. I mean, he was all about it whenever it was time to do it. And so, no regrets. I'm going to miss that man so much. Such an influence of my life. And I just want to thank you guys for coming, okay? Can you hit Michael Jackson now? Just kidding.
Good morning, everyone. I was also a student of Coach Arnold's sociology class. I was in his first semester, 2020. I graduated from Oak in 2021, and he was at my graduation. He helped me fight the school to get them to use the correct name when I walked across the stage, because I am a transgender man. And so the fact that he was willing to do that really, really meant a lot to me. And I feel like it means a lot to a lot of people, because diversity is starting to be a more acceptable thing, and he had a lot of diverse students in his sociology class. Whenever I walked into his classroom for the first time, he read me like a book. I didn't even have to say a word to him. He just knew immediately. He knew that I was a person that was going through a rough time. He knew that I was a person that needed help. He held me after class the first day that I had him. And like I said, I never said a word to him. And he asked me, he said, "What is it about you? Why am I drawn to you?" I told him, "I don't know." He said, "Well, you seem like an interesting person. You seem like a person with a story. I want to know your story." And that's when I spilled it. I have never had a teacher that was able to read me like that. I've never had a teacher that was able to just tell I needed help. He was able to tell. So I told him right from the bat, I was like, well, it's hard being a trans person in Texas, especially in high school. I knew from a very, very young age, and I feel like that made it even harder because it wasn't something that I was able to hide, especially in high school. So having someone's back, someone I could lean on, it meant the world to me. And I will admit, he saved me from suicide. I was going through a whole lot with family problems on top of me being trans. And I didn't want to be here anymore. He changed that. He asked me if I could write my sociology essay on my experiences as a transgender student and my experiences battling gender dysphoria so that I can not only educate him, but so that he can educate his further classes. I was more than willing to do so. I don't remember how long it was, but he told me we had to have 400 words at max. I'm pretty sure I went to the thousands. He ended up keeping the essay that I wrote, and he laminated it, from what I'm aware. And I have a transgender cousin named Danny, who is a current senior at Oak. They took his class as well and told me that whenever they got into that topic of LGBT stuff, he read my essay out loud to their class, not even knowing that me and Danny are related. So knowing that he was still passing on the words that I had to say about my experiences to future generations and educating them, it makes me feel seen, I guess. It makes me feel happy to know that my words had an impact on him. Not only did he have an impact on me, I impacted him as well. He didn't know much of anything about being trans or anything like that, but he wanted to learn. And that's the one thing that I'm always going to cherish from him, is that he wanted to learn. He had no judgment, nothing. He just wanted to learn. And y'all mentioned he got phone calls in the middle of the night. I was one of those students at one point. He gave me his number around the end of my first semester. And it was, I want to say like December or so. I was going through a lot of family problems at home. Christmas was coming around. That's always a tough time for my family. And I just needed a shoulder to lean on. So I called him. He answered. And we talked for hours about just anything. We talked about my job, because I had just gotten my first job. So we talked about my first job. We were talking about what my plans were for Christmas, talking about my friends, about when I was going to see him next at school, because this was during Christmas break. And it was just hours of conversation that I forgot what I even called him for. And here soon, I do have plans to get a tattoo in honor of Coach Arnold. One thing that we would say to each other every day after we would leave the class, and it wasn't just me, he would say it to multiple students, it was, see you later, alligator, after a while, crocodile. it was a thing between me and him and a lot of other students. So I was wanting to get a little alligator right here on my arm, just so that every time I look at it, I think to myself, see you later, alligator. There's one thing that always gets me thinking about him, and it's butterscotch candies. When I was a student of his, every day he would hold me after class, like how he gave y'all lifesavers, he would give us butterscotch candies, little bitty butterscotch candies, every time he'd hold us after class. So I actually still have one that he gave me because I forgot I even had it. So I still have one sitting in a box somewhere. And whenever we were doing that whole panther paw thing, writing a letter to teachers that really impacted us, he was the one that I wrote to. And I recently went digging through my school stuff after I learned that he passed, and I found my old yearbook, and in my yearbook, I found the paw that I wrote to him. So I still have the little cutout yellow paper paw that has my little note on it to him. And I'm never gonna throw that away. I'm never gonna lose that. He really did impact me a lot, and I really do think that he was the father figure that I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sam Hutchins. This is my son. I had to have him help me because I'm going through rehab for a spinal injury. However, I just wanted to say, this is my second time going through rehab. In 2014, I had a stroke, and I was paralyzed from my whole left side. When I got through with being in the hospital, I had to go to rehab. Okay. Well, while I was in the hospital about a week, Benji came to visit. When I was in rehab, he came to visit twice. That's just the kind of guy he was. But I want to read a little bit here. And this is, y'all will know, Benji Arnold was a lover. He loved to talk. He loved to laugh. He loved to make people feel better about themselves. He always wanted his students to do better and succeed. Benji didn't care if you were Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, agnostic, or even atheist. He loved you just because you were you. He didn't care if you were Democrat, Republican, Independent, Socialist, or Communist. He just loved you. He didn't care if you were black, white, brown. He just loved you. He did not care if you were Russian, Chinese, North Korean. Just loved you and wanted you to do better and succeed. He truly loved everyone. I'm going to read a couple of things from the Bible, and I think you'll understand that I'm talking about Benji here. In 1 Corinthians 13, God defines love. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It's not rude. It's not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres, and love never fails. Benji Arnold defined love every day in his actions. In John 14, Jesus says, in my Father's house are many mansions. I'm going there to prepare a place for you, and I'll come back for you. Benji's there, and if we're all fortunate enough to go there, he will be waiting. If you don't know where he lives, just walk down the street and look for a large mansion. Benji will be outside waiting for you. He will say, hey, friend, come on in, sit at my table, and I'll get us something to eat and drink, and then we can just talk. We're going to miss you, Benji.
I don't have anything prepared either. I don't think I would have guessed that I would have done this, but this is what he does to people. So here I am. I just wanted to remember this one time I had a cough. I was sitting in class, I had a cough, and it was like an embarrassing cough when you're trying to hold it in and you can't. And so I wasn't because I couldn't. And I remember seeing him rummage around in his desk and then put something on the top of it. And I didn't think much about it. And that was it. And I went to my class, and then I went to my 6th period. And my teacher said, Francina, I have something from Coach Arnold. And it was 4 lemon drops, like the Hall's cough drops. It was 4 of those. And I still have one in my backpack. And I used one of them, I think, a couple weeks ago. but it just reminded me of him. And then I remember one time he asked me to stay after class, and I didn't really know what to expect. I was a little bit scared, but I stayed after class, and he said, "Francina, how much room do you have in your backpack?" And I said, "I have some room in my backpack." He said, "Okay, good." And he reached behind him, and he pulled out a picture frame with a quote in it, like this big. He said, "Do you think this will fit?" I said, I can make it work. And it was a quote about friendship and being a good friend. And he had written some more things on the back, like reminders of things that I need to remember, because he can see the good and the bad in people and what they need to work on. And he wrote things for me, and he said, well, here I am. He said, "Don't tell anyone." Or he said he would give me a -1 as my grade. But I passed the class already, so I hope it's okay. I just think that's the kind of thing that he does for people, and he makes people want to be better. And he always made us laugh. He always made us do silly things like turn around in circles. In front of our desks, people would walk by and just look in the classroom and then just keep going, because they didn't really know what was going on, but it was one of the best classes that I've ever taken, and I think it really changed a lot of my life and the way that I see things. So I really appreciate Coach Arnold.
So I found out that I got into college in his class, and instead of the usual lifesaver, he gave me a Kit Kat, because they were reserved for very special people, and he was the very first person I told, and that is one of my most fondest memories of him. The following year, he made me come back and talk to his class. And I go to the University of Arkansas. If you know anything about the U of A, we call the Hogs, and I'm pretty sure he made me call the Hogs every single semester, every single period, and it's very embarrassing to do it by yourself, so, because it's very long and involved, but he played the fight song and everything, and one thing you have to know about me is I'm a little sassy. I missed class one day for, I don't remember why, and we talked about his syllabus, and he was very strict with his syllabus. And if you missed class, you had to go up to him and say, "What did I miss?" or something like that. But you had to recite it exactly as it was in the syllabus. And I didn't, and I didn't know what it said. And so he made me go back to my desk and figure out what it said before I could come up to him. And I think maybe 10 minutes into class, he asked me. And I was like, "Yep, figured it out." And he said the exact same thing back to me in the exact same tone. And it was just quick as a whip right back to me. I'm sorry. He was the first person I went to see when I went back to Klein Oak. And I loved him like family. I don't know how to wrap this up, but he was one of my favorite people in the entire world. And I will miss him so much. He was one of my biggest supporters and always put a smile on my face. And I know my mom and I snuck into the hospital to see him when he was there, and we weren't supposed to, but that was, I'm not going to apologize for that, because that was just the best thing that we did, and I'm so happy that we did. He was an amazing, amazing man, and I'm so sad that he's gone, and I love everyone in the front row so much, and I don't even know you. But hearing everyone talk, it really just shows how much he touched everyone. And yeah, that's it. Sorry. Thank you guys so much.
Oh, okay. So I think I've got two Coach Arnold stories, ultimately. The first one was I was in his class in the fall of 2017, and I am one of the biggest Astros fans you'll probably ever come across. And that was the year that they won the World Series. I, at the time, had no idea. I was a junior. I had no idea what I wanted to do as, towards college and all that. I just knew I wanted to be around baseball all the time. So I skipped his class to go to the World Series parade that like same week or whatever. And he goes, you need to come back with pictures and videos and all sorts of other stuff to like tell me about it because you're skipping my class. And I was like, okay, that's fair. So I put together this little video and I present it to him the next day that I come back or whatever, and he shows it to the whole class, and that was the very first time I had ever decided I wanted to go into broadcasting and video production. So if I hadn't taken his class that year, I would not be where I am today because I am now about a month away from graduating with a broadcasting degree from the University of North Texas, so that's really fun. The other story is when I was in high school, I wasn't particularly close with my dad, and my dad is about the same age as Coach Arnold was, and I really had a hard time with like telling my parents that like, hey, I want you to be at my things, and I want you to like come out and support me, and so Coach Arnold was always out there, and there was a winter orchestra concert that we played Sleigh Ride at, and there's like the big clappy thing, and it's so my personality to have been the one to do the big clappy thing, and he talked about it the entire next day, and I've never felt more like a star in that moment or like ever in my life than in that moment. So yeah, that's what I got about Coach Arnold. He was probably the single most influential person I ever met at Klein Oak, and I would definitely not be where I am today if it wasn't for him.
Oh boy, I didn't think I'd come up here, but yeah, it's funny you say that because I also went to University of North Texas after Klein Oak. Go me green. So I first met Coach Arnold my freshman year in the fall of 2014. Now, I did take a sociology class in my senior year, but I also had him for world geography back when he used to teach that. And my time in high school I was not in a good place for most of it. Like, I found it hard to socialize, make friends, but then this man came along in my life, and he just turned it all around for me. And yes, if there's one thing I did in high school was that I had a lot of school spirit. So whenever I go to almost every football game and even basketball games. And my freshman year, we were in the playoffs, and out of the blue, he offered to drive me all the way to Waco, where we faced Dallas Skyline, because I believe he knew that they needed my spirit there. Now, of course, we lost that game. But even so, he was willing to drive me all the way up there. And he even brought it up in class the next day or so. Because, like, did you see this student on the Jumbotron? That was my shock. And I only had him those 2 classes. And he always had a mint lifesaver ready. So for those of you who brought it up, thank you. Now, apparently for most of my high school time, I was not too happy and such. And when I graduated in 2018, I was just ready to just never look back and forget all of it. Because I was just ready to start fresh in a new place. But it's because of him, because of Coach Arnold, that I actually had a reason to come back and see those hallways again. Because despite the hardships I felt spiritually, he left a mark in my heart, and so many others. So, thank you, Coach. Thank you.
So, I knew Coach Arnold. I actually have his class right now. So I only had him for about a month. It wasn't very long. But my mom works at the school, and she's in the front office, and so he would come and he would sit down sometimes. And when I would go in for lunch or after school, he would talk to me. And my first semester, I did have psychology, and now I am very upset that I had psychology first semester because I did not get to experience his class. And before I even had his class, he would talk to me about some of the things that he did. And he was very excited to have me in his class, and I was very excited to be there. And the first day I sat down, and I love to read, and I am the person that walks in the hallways reading a book. And he was very impressed that I did not run into anybody or a wall. And he looked at me and he was like, "Can you put the book down for 45 minutes? I need 45 minutes. And I said, okay. And he made it very clear that nothing was to be on your desk. You'd only have your computer. And I have a habit of putting my book on the corner of my desk. And I sat in the very front because I had nowhere else to go, because my previous class is very far away. I sat in the very front, and I was right in front of him, so whenever he was talking, I was looking right at him. And the first day of school, he looked at me and he said, "Okay, your things for class are your computer and your book." And he would make it very clear for like the first week. He would tell everybody, "Okay, take everything off of your desk," and then he would look at me, "But not you, put your book right there." And he would keep track or notice whenever I finished a book, and I would have a different one. And there was one day that I finished a book before I went to his class, and I have a sketchbook because I'm in art, and I put it in the corner. And I put it away in my bag, and he looked at me and he was like, "Where is your book? Take it out. Where is it?" And I said, "Well, I finished it." And he looked at me and he was like, "You don't have another one?" I said, "No." And he was like, "I'm very disappointed. This is what you're supposed to have in class. You're supposed to have your computer and your book." And he was very upset that I did not have my book. And I remember him saying that he specifically, like the row of desks that I was in, he had them staggered so that he could see everybody. And he was very, he would always look at us, and he would always make sure that we made eye contact. And there was one time that I'm an officer for National Art Honor Society, and I was going to be at the booths when the 8th graders came to class. And he was the only teacher that I emailed to tell him that I was going to be out of class that day, that I was going to be there, but I wasn't going to be in class. And I told him what I was doing, and I got this response, and I screenshotted it because I graduate this year and I didn't want to lose it in my emails. And it said, "Miss Christina Duque, a booth for NAHS, talking and recruiting young, hopeful, aspiring students. How are you going to do that with your undivided attention if you are on chapter 6 right before the aliens attack? Self-discipline, focus, thank you for following protocol." And I showed my mom, and we were laughing for a good 5 minutes. And the next day, I went back to class, and he was asking me how it went. He was a very kind person, and I'm very sad that I didn't get to take his class. Every day I go in, and he's not there. And even though Mr. Nelson was there, it wasn't the same from those first 2 weeks. But I'll always remember those first few weeks. And I know that it would have been my favorite class that I've ever taken. And I always knew that I wanted to take sociology, but I regret not taking it sooner. Thank you.
Thank you for using the microphone, because now I know that I am allowed to. think everyone else had words prepared, and I do not, so bear with me on this one. I took Coach Arnold's class last school year, the second semester, so from January 2022 to whenever it ended. And I did not know at all what I was supposed to expect from this class. I'm not gonna lie, I took sociology because I wanted to take psychology. My psychology teacher is in the room somewhere. But I walked in and we sat down, and I sat down at the front because that's the kind of person I am. And his class was not what I was expecting it to be. He would ask questions that I did not see how they correlated to anything that was relevant at all. And I would be one of the first to answer. If any of y'all took his class, this might resonate with y'all, but I answered so many of his questions that he gave me a quarter to stop answering them. I still have that quarter at home because that day he didn't finish whatever spiel he was on about. I think it was about the syllabus. And he was like, if you let me come in here tomorrow and not talk about the syllabus, I will take that quarter back. So I reminded him, and he said, thank you for the reminder. We're not talking about that today, though. I'm still a little convinced he might take the quarter back. But whatever I expected to be learning in sociology is not what I learned at all. He taught a lot of lessons that if you had asked me before, I would have told you I was not ready to learn about, like emotionally. Every hard-hitting topic you could possibly think of right now, he probably at least spent a day on. It was hard to sit through at times, and sometimes I couldn't really sit through it. But he always talked in the most genuine and honest way. He had compassion with what he would say, if not necessarily sensitivity. But to be fair, I think I needed compassion more than I needed sensitivity. He would hold me after class a lot because last year was a little rough for me, and he could tell. I never had to tell him what my problems were, what was wrong. He'd always guess. He always knew somehow. I do not know why. He'd be like, your facial expression changed. And I was like, no, it didn't. But he'd ask me, he'd be like, is this going on? I'm like, I don't know how you know that, but yes. And he'd talk me through it, and I was late to fourth period so many times. But he'd always give me these little lifesaver breath mints every time he'd hold me after. Yeah. He gave them to the offsites too. But he would give me one of those, and he'd be like, okay, get out of here, go. And I'm like, yes, sir. He and I became very close because I had problems, and he liked fixing problems. He became almost kind of a father figure to me, as I'm sure a lot of the students he had can resonate with. He knew that whenever I graduated, because I graduate this year, I still go to Klein Oak. He knew whenever I graduate, my parents probably would not take me anywhere to celebrate. And so he had told me that he would take me out wherever I wanted to go after I graduate. And that was a plan that I was holding on to. So, hey, Coach, you owe me dinner. But he touched me in many ways, and I can't promise that I would be the person I am right now standing in front of you if it had not been for one semester of a sociology class. And every single time I'm driving, I think of the fact that I'm supposed to be able to see the person in front of me's back wheels touch the road. When other drivers do not, I will always do it. Thank you all for your time. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Coach Arnold was my position coach, and I had his sociology class. It sounds like he didn't give us candy, so I don't know when all that started. I feel really anyway, but he was, for me, he's the reason I even had a football career in high school. Not much of one, but I had one. Me and Emmett were talking about it driving over. At the end of our freshman year, we were finishing up doing our bench press maximums and all that stuff, which he never really put a lot of thought into that. He didn't think you had to be a big, strong guy to play football. You just had to want to play. And I was walking out of the room, of the weight room, and he was standing next to the offensive line coach, and the O-line coach said, "What did you bench?" And I said, "I don't know, 210 or something like that." And he goes, "Well, you got to bench 250 if you're going to play for me." And without hesitation, Coach Arnold said, "He's going to play for me." And I did. From that moment on, I played for him. When I was on the field, I wanted to make him proud. And at the end of my junior season, he was dismissed from the football program, and it devastated me. And I was going to quit football. And I went to him, and I talked to him. I wasn't going to play my senior year, and he said, "Absolutely not. You're going to play." And I did, and I appreciate him, telling me to do it, because I would have regretted it later if I hadn't. But he was the things he would say. I remember at practice in two-a-days, it's 105 degrees, and we would have to lay our helmets with the face mask facing north on water breaks. And one day I said, "Coach, why do we have to do that?" And he goes, "Well, in case a blizzard comes up and it snows, you can find your helmet and you'll know which way to go to get to the field house." I said, "Okay, if that's what you say, I guess so." So it made sense. And I'll tell this story. I told Christy earlier, our freshman year, we practiced in the mornings. So we would have to walk over to the JV side of the field house to shower, because the freshman shower would be too full. And there's a little hallway right there, and there was a training room. And me and another guy were walking through. We didn't have anything but a towel. And he's standing in that room, and he says, "You two come see me after you cleaned up." I'm like, crap, what do we do this time? I don't even know what we did. So we go into his office, and he says, "Do you realize if I'd have been a female trainer standing in that room when y'all came walking by, how much trouble you'd be in?" And I said, "But Coach, why would that door even be open? And that could even be a possibility." And he said, "Get out of here." And the next day when we got down there, that door was shut, and it had a lock on it, so that wouldn't happen. So, he didn't say, he didn't get on to me or anything. "You're right," and that's it. And then I don't know how he does sociology now, but back in 1987, during sociology, he would make us stand up and act out what we were doing. So he would tell me, he called me Mr. Baker. "Mr. Baker, come up here. How much is a case of Corona beer right now?" And I'd say, "It's $19.55. And he'd go, "Now, how does he know that?" He knows that because he's out there trying to buy it every weekend, is what he's doing. And he'd say, "Now, show me how you walk into the beer store to buy beer." And really? Yeah, that's what he would do. So something else. I think about him all the time. I've always thought about him my whole life. The impact he's had on me. I can never put it in words, really. You guys are lucky to have had him as your dad, and you really are. I would have given anything to have a dad like that. So thank y'all.